Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. This is actually a very unique podcast today because for the first time ever, Max and I are recording from different cities. Max is currently on tour. I'm in Toronto. Max, what's going on? Where are you in the United States right now?
I am in the city of brotherly love. I'm in Philadelphia right now.
Woo.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, we have a great episode for you today. Our guest today is Toronto Maple Leafs assistant GM, Kyle Dubas. And the reason Kyle Dubas is such a sort of fascinating guy to talk to is he got hired to be the Leafs assistant GM at 28 years old. So he's a bit of a whiz kid, and his journey's been fascinating to get to that sort of really elite executive role. But before that, Max, how's tour been, man? What's been going on? I feel like I haven't seen you.
Tour's been good. But before we get to that, the one question that we didn't ask, and I don't know if it's public record or not, I should probably just look it up, is how much does Kyle Dubas make? You know? I know it's like this guy is our age. And when you think about it, it's like the Toronto Maple Leafs are the most lucrative NHL franchise in the history of hockey. And he's like the assistant to the general manager. He's a very important role in the organization. He's got to be making more money than just about anybody we know, right?
It's such a funny thing, like what somebody makes and the curiosity that goes along with that. But did you want to ask Kyle that?
Yeah, I kind of did. And I feel like, you know what? Because he came by the recording studio when we were making our record in the fall, and we got to hang out with him. And then we hung out with him again when we were doing the pod. So I think on the third time, I'll ask him. So if he invites us to like a hockey game or something like that, he already gave us tickets to a hockey game, which was very nice of him. But I think the third time, get like 3 drinks in me, and I'll be like, come on, what are you taking in?
Yeah, but you're on the road. We talked sparingly, trying to save it for the pod. What's it been like? How you been doing?
It's been going pretty good. The tour started. I'm trying to think of highlights because we've been on the road for a couple weeks. We were in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. Our friend, The Nut, that we'll refer to him as, we won't even mention his real name because we actually had to take down a podcast last week because we could have got him into trouble. But he was down in South by with us, and he was kind of exhibiting the behavior of every kind of, I don't know how you say it, asshole marketing guy. You know, those people that aren't actually, pouring their hearts out performing, but they're the kind of people just sort of judging, and if there's a good moment for their social media account, they'll be taking lots of photos. And so I have a great photo of him. I'm in the crowd watching Mastercraft perform, and he's side stage because he's the kind of guy that gets to go side stage anywhere he goes. And he's side stage, and he's taking he was literally taking photos for about, I don't know, 15 minutes straight. It was probably all going to a Snapchat account. But yeah, so he was in fine form in Austin. But was that too mean, Mike? Was that being too mean?
We're going to have to cut it out, I'm sure, but hey.
Okay. Well, just warming up. No. But yeah, South by was fun. But we had a couple days off in New York this past week because we played on Friday night. I called my girlfriend Lauren. I was like, Lauren, I'm going to fly you down. I have 2 days off in New York. Let's do it. And she said, no, I have to study. So then I went to my next in line, Dan Hamilton, my dear friend, and he had a very busy work weekend, so he couldn't come. You're number 3 on the list, Mike. I just want to let you know.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
I was wondering how many names you were going to go through until we got to the point where you messaged me to come to New York.
No, you were literally in 3rd place, which is pretty good,
Trust me, I thought good and hard about it.
Well, it ended up, I met up with Mike, our guitar player, and Molly, his girlfriend, or wife, I guess. They're married now, Jesus. And we ended up actually going to a really cool dance club in Manhattan, on the Lower East Side, and it was a very sort of good-looking, rich 20-something crowd. I was sort of mesmerized by the whole thing. It was. Did you feel like you were in an episode of Gossip Girl? Kind of. I kind of did, but I also missed you guys so much because this is the kind of place that the Champagne Boys would have ruled. I could just imagine the sort of the bits our friend Julian would be doing in the club. Julian, for our listeners, he does this thing where he pretends to smoke a cigarette, and then he offers the fake cigarette to some girl, and the girl will say, no, I don't smoke, but not realizing that he doesn't actually have a cigarette in his hand. It's all mime. It's all mime. Yeah, he's the best physical comedian that I know. But anyway, so the part of the story I want to get to though is that Sunday rolls around. and I was very tired. I was very sluggish the whole day. But I'm wandering around Manhattan, and we have a possible line on some Rihanna tickets because she's playing Barclays Center on Sunday night, right? And I'm very excited about the possibility of getting to go to the show. It's about 5 o'clock, and I just find out that we got tickets to go to this thing. But I'm so tired. I'm like a little bit hungover, and my phone is at about 15%, and I'm just like, I would kill a man for a nap right now. You know when you really just need like 20 minutes of shut eye? And I just start racking my brain thinking about like, do I know anybody who lives like in Greenwich Village that I could just text to go nap on their couch? Which sounds kind of crazy. But I was like, I don't know anybody in this part of Manhattan. And then I walk up to this corner, and there's those Chinese massage places. So I go in. I'm like, this could work. So I go in. I look at the rates. It's like $35 for 45 minutes. I'm like, this is amazing. I could have bought a T-shirt or something, or I could get a massage and charge my phone. And have a nap. And had a nap. So I did it, and it was the best move I made the whole weekend. It was amazing. This little old Asian lady like just dug her elbows into my back for about 45 minutes. It kind of hurt a little bit, but I charged my phone. I closed my eyes, and it was just incredible. I don't quite understand, like, what's the stigma with rub and tugs? Is that a, and this was a Chinese, like, I don't know that, but anyway, if I'm one of these people that are running one of these establishments, I'd be totally insulted by the insinuation that, there's, unsuitable behavior happening in these places because they literally just provide a great service at a very reasonable rate. It's way cheaper than if I went to some fancy ass spa or something, some hoity-toity place.
You're talking about the hand job?
No, come on. Anyway, so that totally, I got a total second win from that. We go to the concert, and Rihanna was amazing. And also, I got to say, going to a concert in Brooklyn was such a treat. Seeing anybody, I think, in New York City, and you get to sort of collection of like every kind of person, and everybody's like dressed up for the show, and everybody looks amazing who's like going to the concert. Miguel, the R&B superstar singer, he just like walked by us. Oh, Travis Scott, who's like an upcoming rapper, he came into the crowd during his
I saw
set.
your Snapchat.
I know, and he was literally
exciting.
He was touching me. I was literally that close, and he was going, and there was like this 16-year-old like white boy kid who was rapping along to every lyric. He knew every song, and Travis Scott must have seen him from the stage, and he came out, and he made that kid's life. The kid was like literally like the happiest person I've ever seen. So I don't know, the whole thing, our New York weekend was pretty magical.
Sounds like it turned out pretty good. I mean, at the start of this story, you sounded very like homesick for the Champagne Boys. Like you seemed a little melancholy. You were kind of down. You were at this club. You kind of missed us. You wanted us to be there. And by the end, it looks like you ended up having a pretty exciting time.
Yeah, I had a rub and tug and a Rihanna concert there.
Well, Max, on this episode, we talked to Kyle Dubas.
That's right. Our boy. Kid Wonder. Boy Wonder.
Boy Wonder, all the way from Sault Ste. Marie to the big time here in Toronto.
Yeah. He's got another connection because he's married to somebody who grew up with Shane, our very own pop culture aficionado.
Yeah, and Kyle is doing really good things. I mean, we went and did this interview at MLSC, like in their offices there at Bay Street where the ACC is.
Yeah, he was... I know he's a very busy guy, and he travels a lot. So it took us a few months to sort of lock down this interview, but he was very, very gracious with his time.
And the thing about Kyle is because he's been so sort of successful so young, like, I mean, as you'll hear in the interview, he was the GM of, a minor league team in Sault Ste. Marie, the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds at 25, and then he gets this assistant GM job at 28. He was like a player agent right out of school in his early 20s. He's sort of, you go, oh man, how is a guy like this young, this successful? And I think when you listen to the interview, you sort of go, oh, he gets it. He's very smart. I imagine every interview he's ever gone into, he's absolutely killed.
I know. That's the thing. After we left the office, we're like, that guy will get any job ever. Because he's kind of a handsome guy, but kind of handsome in like a Coach Taylor kind of way. Like he doesn't even know he's handsome. Like, and he's not showy about it. He doesn't act like a handsome guy, but you kind of like look at him, you're like, this guy's a handsome motherfucker. And he's also very well spoken. Very well spoken. He's the kind of guy you could really trust with information. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if I was like, Kyle, I got a secret, and you can't say anything to anybody, you know he would never tell anybody.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like me, if you tell me something, you're like, no, he's the kind of guy that might tell somebody else.
Yes.
I'm talking about me.
Oh, big time. Oh, Matt, you're the biggest gossip I know besides my brother.
Well, let's get to the interview.
Let's get to it. Taking on a role like this.
Sure.
At a relatively young age, I mean, I imagine it would involve a lot of sort of like maturity and sort of responsibility to take on a role like this. Do you find that you were sort of always naturally that way, or is that something that you've had to like grow towards in this role?
I think I've had the fortune of coming from where I came from in Sault Ste. Marie. People often, it's a hard thing to explain, but the role there was so much more attention individually on me because the staff of that team is so small. So the city is very isolated. There's not a whole lot around it, and there's only one show in town. It's the Greyhounds. So there, wherever you go, every single place that you go, everybody knows who you are, and everybody has an opinion about the team. So going into that situation, I was 25, and being from there, my whole family living there, and then everybody knowing you and everywhere you go, there was no way to escape it. And our first year was a failure, to put it mildly. The team got off to a good start, and we totally collapsed. And during that time, I learned so much about how to operate under an intense microscope, and I guess you mature and you grow as a professional in doing that. Going through it at the time, you hate it every day. It sucked. It wasn't a lot of fun. Everywhere you go, people are on you about the team not performing well, the team being a joke. The team had missed the playoffs for 3 of the 4 years before I went there, or 2 of the 3 years in a conference where 8 of the 10 teams make it. So we missed my first year there as the GM, and the patience had been taken up already. There was no patience left in the fan base. So it was heavy scrutiny, and because of that, I think I know I grew a lot as a professional and matured as a manager. So that was without that experience, I don't know that I'm well suited to come here.
Right. I mean, with that kind of scrutiny, I always wonder this, with GMs or anyone in sort of a leadership position, a team performing poorly, do you take that personally, even though you're not one of these athletes on the ice or on the court? I mean, how much do you carry that?
You carry, even when your team is really good and you're in a tight game or you lose and you leave, there's a burden that follows you around. There's nothing better than when your team is playing well and you're winning, and everywhere you go, people are excited, they want to talk to you, they want to tell you how great the team is, how happy they are. And there's nothing worse than when you feel like you're disappointing. In management, you feel like you're disappointing everybody. You feel like you've disappointed the players by not having them set up for success, the coaches, and probably the worst is when you feel like you're disappointing the fan base or the community. And in my first year in Sault Ste. Marie, that's what it felt like. And here in Toronto, it's different because I came in knowing that it was going to be a long-term project. It wasn't going to be anything that was going to deliver instant gratification for myself, for the fan base, and for the organization.
And the fan base seemed prepared for that. I feel like that, they were ready for sort of a teardown or at least a rebuild.
When you walk around in Toronto now, whenever we go anywhere and people, for one, not as many people recognize you here as when you're in Sault Ste. Marie and doing that job. So there's a little bit more anonymity to it.
Sure.
There's certain places where you go where everybody is all over you all the time, which is fine. But here, people will come up to you when they talk to you, and it's not, the Leafs are brutal, or you guys need to fix this. They'll come up to you. Anyone who comes up to me, I've never had a person say a negative thing, and anyone that's come up to me has said, stay the course, we're in it, we understand what you're doing, don't try to expedite the plan, do it right. I've never really seen anything like it, because when I was debating, when my wife and I were deciding whether we were going to come here, that was the main negative that everybody had, that I talked to, was the fans don't have the patience in Toronto, and it's been completely the opposite. So the fans are not only patient, they want us to do it right and want us to do it for as long as it takes to get it right and build a contending team. So that's been that's made it easier in terms of the pressure here.
Growing up in Sault Ste. Marie, did you play a lot of sports?
So I played hockey, baseball, football, basically anything that I could play. I did. Most of my family was a hockey family. My grandfather coached the Greyhounds in the 60s, and my father worked for the team in the 80s. My sister still works for the team now. So there's 3 generations of our family that have been involved with the team. A lot of my time was spent playing hockey. I played until I was 14. I had some concussion issues when I was 14,
Wow.
and I had been working for the Greyhounds from when I was 11 years old. From 11 to when I was 14. I did the sticks and the water bottles, and it was when you grow up in Sault Ste. Marie and you get a chance to do that for the Greyhounds. I guess the best comparable I think in sports would be like being able to be the ball boy for the Packers in Green Bay, because
Sure.
it's a small town. It's all anyone thinks about and talks about. So that was a lot of fun. I got to have a lot of great experiences doing that. And when I had to stop playing hockey, I started to, Dave Mayville was the general manager at the time, and then Craig Hartsburg, who coaches for Columbus now, and they started to have me do more hockey-related things, and I did that all the way through high school. So I go to school, my grandfather would pick me up, drive me to the rink, pick me up at 7:30, I'd go home, do homework, and then do the same thing the next day.
So you leave then, you go to Brock.
Yeah.
So how long were you there?
I was there for 4 years. When I was leaving to go to Brock, I'd worked for the team for 6 years, so for the Greyhounds for 6 years. When I was leaving to go to Brock, by pure happenstance, our scout in that area had resigned from his position. So I was 17 at the time when I was going to Brock, and our scout in that area resigned to focus more on his team he was coaching or what have you. So I had been around the team for so long and been in all the draft meetings, and Dave Torrey, the general manager at the time who now scouts for LA, came to me and said, would this be something that you're interested in? And of course I said yes. So
Can you say it in a higher voice? Like,
yes, sir.
Yeah. Your 17-year-old voice?
Yeah. So it was the first year I lived on campus, and it was when junior B players could still play and be eligible for the OHL draft, so I would go to the St. Catharines and Thorold games, and then the next year in the summer worked for the Greyhounds and worked at a golf course and saved up and bought a car, and my scouting area increased, and I did that all through university. So I went to school full time and did that job full time as well.
So how does that lead to back to Sault Ste. Marie?
So at the end of my time at university, I was always really interested in the agent business, and I got to know a lot of different agents and was offered a position with an agency in Burlington Uptown Sports, and so I took that position and lived in St. Catharines for 1 year and commuted there, and then moved to Hamilton. And so I did that for 5 years. Personally, I started to feel like I had missed being on the team side of hockey. When you're in the agent business, you're recruiting players and you're representing them, and you're spending a lot of time as a counselor and a psychologist for them and trying to help them improve and get better, but there's no winning and losing. You win when your clients make the NHL and you get paid. And it wasn't really, for me, that's not really what gets me excited. I mean,
Right.
For me, I get excited about building things and building organizations and winning. And so at that point, it was a great experience for me. I got to travel all around the world in hockey, and we opened up an operation in Stockholm and one in out west in Calgary. So the business grew and it was fun. I got to learn how to recruit in a business that's very tough to recruit, and so there was a lot of positives from it. I learned a lot about the business side of hockey and different things and negotiating skills and so on and so forth. But there wasn't the winning and losing or the everyday passion that goes into that. And,
Sure.
just at the time where I was starting to really think of whether it was what I wanted to do, I'd come home from that trip and put my bags down, and I got an email on my phone from the owners in Sault Ste. Marie saying that they had let go of their general manager, and my name had come up as being mentioned for someone who might be a good fit for the job. They were going to go through a thorough process. Would I be interested in coming and interviewing? So I thought about it, talked to a lot of people. I was 25 at the time, and the second correspondence from them was, well, you have a uphill battle because of your age, and there's some concerns amongst our board of directors that you'd be able to do it at that age, especially considering the team had been struggling, as I said, missed the playoffs 2 of the 3 years before, and the fan base wanted an established person, so on and so forth. So I went back and forth between whether to apply or not, or whether to say yes to the interview or not, and ultimately I got some advice from a friend of mine in hockey, Ryan Jankowski. He's now with Hockey Canada, and he'd said, if you don't go up and interview for that job, it's a team that means more to you than any other team. You'll always regret not going up and interviewing, if you get it, it could be one of the greatest experiences of your life. If you don't interview, you're always going to look back and regret that you didn't give yourself the chance. So I decided to interview, prepared meticulously for it, went in, had my interview, left the interview when they had 9 or 10 still to go, and I had no idea how it went at all. It was the first time in my life where I walked out of something and had no idea whether it went good or bad or had any inkling whatsoever. 2 days later, they called back wanting to know if I'd go up for a second interview, and at the second interview, they offered me the position.
Did you find that those concerns were founded, that your peers maybe didn't want to deal with you because you're a 25-year-old kid? Like, was that something that sort of manifested itself?
I found right away that there was the veteran managers in the league that rightfully, and I don't look back on it and hold any grudge, they were testing me right away to see whether they could rip us off in a deal or whether they could take advantage of it. And I think that that's what they should have done. If they wouldn't have done that, I would doubt their ability as a manager. I mean, you're competing in that league. There's 20 teams, so you're competing against the 19 other managers to manage your team best and to build your team as well as possible. So if you can win a trade or you can win a deal, as much as people say sometimes, well, we want this to be a win-win for both teams. Nobody ever really means that. They want it to be a win for them.
They want to win the trade.
And if the other team does okay, that's fine, but they should do slightly less fine.
Yeah. So I mean, it's fascinating because you start so young. From working with the Greyhounds, like you're saying. At 17 you're scouting, and you're also at Brock, and then you get a job at 25. I guess along the way, to be so career-oriented, from such a young age, did you find it difficult to toggle back and forth? I mean, did you go out for beers? Did you have like an active social life? Or did you have to give up and sacrifice some of that to be so successful so young?
I think that certainly some of it was sacrificed. I don't think I had as much fun as other people. But I certainly still had fun. Like at Brock, for example, I would have class, and then I would go to a game or whatever, and it would be over at 10, and then I would go to wherever all the guys were. Yeah, we'd go to, on Thursday night it was easy because the Thorold Blackhawks played Thursday night. Then I would go to wherever all my friends were getting ready to go to the campus bar, Isaac's, and then go to Isaac's, and then when you got up Friday, you got up Friday. So it was trying to balance that all out was tough, and there were certainly a lot of things that I missed that, but I don't really regret. Like my greatest friends now today are still people like some of my closest friends in high school and university, and I talk to them every day basically. So I don't think anything was lost to that. I think a lot of my best friends understood the way that I was. It was hockey. It wasn't like I wanted to be a banker or an economist or something like that. It was everyone in Canada by and large loves hockey or loves sports.
Sure.
So, no matter what sport it is. So if you have a chance to progress in it, I think that's optimal versus any other type of career that you're not as passionate about.
So you're in the Sioux. You're doing a great job as the GM there. How do the conversations start with the almighty Toronto Maple Leafs?
We had some other discussions with other teams in the spring. It was 2014.
When you say discussions with teams, like you were actively looking to make a move?
I wasn't. The one thing I've never ever done that I don't believe in is I've never actively looked to move, no matter where. I didn't look to leave from the Sioux to go into the agent business. I didn't actively chase the Sioux job from my spot as a player agent, and I never ever approached any NHL team when I was in the Sioux. So I think because of my age, it was always sort of it was a double-edged sword. It was intriguing to people because you were young and doing well, but on the other side of it, and I think rightfully so, people question whether you could be effective at that age. And I had always gone through that. So when I was a scout, then when I was an agent, then when I went to the Sioux, and then subsequently coming here, it's been 4 times where I've had people say, well, he's too young. I don't know that he can do that job. So I've never really, knowing I already had that against me, I just also never believed in chasing other jobs while you're doing what you're doing. I think the minute that you start to do that, you eliminate some of your effectiveness in the job that you're in. So in the spring of that year, I was approached by 2 other teams, and I had every year my contract in the Sioux, it was just kind of boilerplate stuff in the contract. You had until July 1st if you wanted to move up a level. So not a lateral move to another OHL team, but if you moved up to the AHL with NHL. And our team, we had built it to the point where that was going into my 4th year there. I had a great relationship with Sheldon Keefe, our coach, who now coaches the Marlies, and decided, my wife and I were getting married on July the 6th, and we just decided that for the location of the teams and everything we had going on, how good we thought the team in the Sioux was going to be, that other opportunities would come along. So we decided that we're going to return to the Sioux. We go away, we leave on July 2nd for our wedding. We have the rehearsal on July 4th, and as we're walking back from our rehearsal party to the hotel room, maybe it was the bar, actually, with our friends, I get an email on my phone from Brendan Shanahan. I had never met Brendan Shanahan before, never talked to him. Email said, "Hi Kyle, your name has been brought up to me by some people in hockey. I'd like to have a discussion with you in the coming days if possible." So I at first thought it was some type of a joke, like I don't even know Brendan Shanahan. I was obviously aware that he had left the league and come to the Leafs, and didn't really expect something like that. It was kind of out of the blue. And so I responded back to him the next day and said, I'm actually away right now getting married. I get back, we're in Mexico, I get back on the 9th. He said, can I meet with you on the 10th at 5 o'clock? It's the end of our development camp. So I went and met with him and had no idea what it was really about. I talked to my wife and she said, well, we're in Hamilton, it's in Toronto, why don't you just go and do it and see what he has to say. You've never met him before. And I said, so I responded back and said, sure, I'll come and meet. And I thought it was just going to be basically a discussion. I thought he would have questions about our use of analytics or the common things that people would ask. Like pick your brain. Yeah. So I went and met with him at the MasterCard Center in Etobicoke and started at 5, and I got home at 1 in the morning. I left there at midnight, and by the end of the conversation, I'd realized that it was more than just a conversation of someone trying to pick your brain or get to know something. He had, said that he didn't know what was going to happen with their organization, but he might be interested in seeing if I was available to come in. And I said, I didn't expect anything more to come of it. Then the next day, I got another email from Brendan, and then began meeting with him and Dave Nonis, and then got to the point where they had said, hey, we would like you to join the organization. Well, the issue with that was that my out clause with the Sioux had ended July 1st, so they needed permission from Sault Ste. Marie, who would then be left without a general manager in the middle of July. And at that point, it went from being the excitement of being approached. I mean, my wife's from Hamilton, my family's all in Sault Ste. Marie. There's no easier team to work for us in terms of our families and our friends and where they live. So it went from being the excitement of that to that there could be a possibility to then a couple days later, I really had a lot of, it was a really emotional time because I then began to deal with the part of leaving the people in the Sioux. So we put together the whole staff there, all the players that had come there, and the team was about to be really, really good. They ended up finishing first in the league last year in the regular season. And knowing that I brought all the people there, I started to feel bad about leaving them at that time, and got to the point of saying, well, if opportunities like this are presenting themselves now, then if we have another really good year, I'm sure that those opportunities will be there again. And then you get to, in your head, well, what if they aren't? And you pass it up, and you go through this whole back and forth. So there's a lot of reflecting, and I couldn't really tell anybody. Brendan, the one thing with him was they didn't want anyone at all to know. So the chairman of the board of directors in the Sioux knew, I knew, Brendan knew, Dave Nonis knew, and my wife. So it was basically, I had nobody else that I could.
You couldn't lean on anybody.
I could lean to or talk to. So it was my wife and I, and she was supportive of whatever I decided. It didn't matter to her. She just wanted me to be happy. So then it was a huge back and forth internally as to whether to do it. So about a week later, I met with Dave and Brendan again, and they offered me the job. And I didn't know at the time that they were also going to be moving other people out. So they offered me the job and the position of assistant general manager and a contract. And I had to go home that night and think about it. And I had come to the decision that it was probably the best move for our family and for me. I thought that the team in the Soo would be okay, and they were fine with me helping them transition to a new general manager for the next couple of months. And so I took the position, and then the next day came back and they announced it, and it's been kind of just rolling on ever since.
You also negotiated some Raptor season tickets too, right, into your deal?
Leafs, Raptors, oh yeah. whatever we can get.
Yeah, you told me that. I was like, smart man.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Was the reaction sort of like with your family and friends universally like, were people like, holy shit?
Well, nobody in my family or any of my friends had any idea. So the morning before it's announced was probably the craziest morning I've ever experienced. So they said that they were going to announce it at noon, because I said so that night I met with Dave and Brendan downtown and was leaving and driving back. So I called my wife and explained to her what was offered, and then I didn't know whether I was going to take it. The only people that knew in the Soo were the owners. Well, I had to call them late at night and say, I've been offered the position. They said, well, you're going to take it? I said, I really don't know. And at this time, they were also, because it was mid-July, late July, they are now pushing me for an answer too. They gave permission for me to speak to Toronto. Brendan had called there, and Brendan and Dave had called there. But now they're pushing me for an answer too, because they don't want to be left with me delaying. And so I'm feeling I do the right thing and make a quick decision on a life-changing move. So I talked to Shannon, my wife, and decided to do it. So late at night that Monday, I call the owner in the Soo and tell him, and then he says, can you call the PR guy and let him know? And so they were going to, I said to Brendan and Dave, I just need some time in the morning. I need to talk to my family. I need to talk to...
Before they hear about it on the news.
I need to talk to the staff in the Soo. I don't want them finding out anywhere else. So it was going to be announced here at noon, and so I started to drive in at 10. I was planning on calling everybody on my drive in to Toronto from Hamilton. And Brendan called me in a rush saying stuff is starting to leak out on our end. We're going to release it in like 30 minutes. And I said, I haven't talked to a single person. I said, you need to give me some sort of time. He's like, well, start calling everybody as soon as you can. So I'm trying to reach my family, trying to reach all the staff in the Soo, and so on and so forth. And then as I was driving in, they released it. And so I was on the Gardiner kind of coming into Toronto, and my phone just went crazy. And life's been a bit nuts ever since, but it's all good.
You get a lot of asks for tickets?
I think my wife gets more than anybody. Largely I don't get nothing directly to me, but my wife and my family and my friends get a lot from.
I think Shane on the show actually has asked your wife because
he came to a Raptors game against Brooklyn last month.
Yeah,
yes.
That's right.
Yeah,
a lot's made of analytics and sort of like old guard, new guard. In your role, how have you found sort of, I guess, the outlook from maybe more traditional coaches and GMs, the older hockey guard, and is there that divide? Do you see that? Because people seem to write about it a lot.
I have the benefit of being somebody that's grown up on the scouting and hockey side of it, that became interested. So I started with that before analytics was anything in hockey. And so it was, the late 90s, early 2000s. It wasn't even a discussion really. It was baseball where it became so progressive and pushed it forward. So being a big baseball fan, I would always follow the various progressions in analysis and what was being done with the data from baseball. So I got the opportunity to see that on a first-hand basis all through as that dialogue and that debate started in baseball, which is now 20 years ago where that was starting and happening. And so in hockey, I grew up in scouting and in hockey operations and had always had an interest in analytics from different areas, and I thought it was interesting, and I thought it was great, and I thought it added a lot to everything that could be done. So I had known, and to go back to the Sioux, had known all the hockey people there, and then was able to bring in the different things that I'd learned on analytics and had observed and had proven to be successful. But there is still, I think in every sport, even in baseball, there's still a big divide between the new school and old school, and I think it'll always be there in some regards, right?
Until the new school become the old school,
right? And I think even then, because of the way that sports are going, you'll have newer things that will come in after that, and it'll always be new versus old. I don't think that bridge will ever be. I don't think that bridge will ever be completely there to have everyone just going back and forth. But I think that's one of the best parts about sports is you have people who believe, in some cases, two totally different things about the same player, the same style of player, the same mechanism within the game. And if you don't become firmly entrenched on either side, you can stay rational and see the positives of both ends. And that's always what I've tried to do. And I know a lot of people say, well, he's just an analytics guy. But I grew up completely opposite of and was trained completely opposite of analytics, and I've just found great value in using data and objective information, objective statistics to help aid in decision making. I think it's extremely valuable. It's for me, I found that's really helped any decisions that have been made in Sault Ste. Marie, here in Toronto. I don't believe that you should solely use just analytics. I think there's so many different things in every sport, and people say, well, hockey's different from baseball and basketball. Of course, all the sports are different. They all have their different intricacies and way that they're played and way to value different talents and abilities. But if you can use all of the information, be able to sort out what's good and what's bad, and then combine it all together, I think it's foolish not to do so, and I find huge value in using data and analytics in hockey and other sports that are more progressive than ours they're a lot further down the road. We're just trying to play catch up, and even here with the Leafs, we're trying to catch other teams in our own league that are a bit ahead of us, but that's the fun part.
You have a pretty cool job right now, but where do you go from here? Is the goal to be running your own team sort of solely in the future?
I don't. I think I get asked that a lot, maybe more than anything. But I think every day when I come here, my goal is just to do the best that I can and stay focused on. Where I've had success in my life is when I'm really just focused on what I'm doing right now and really focused on doing the absolute best that I can do now and not worrying about what the next thing is going to be. That's when I felt that I've been at my best, and then those other things have always followed. So when I was first in the Sioux, then when I was an agent, then when I was in the Sioux again, I found that any time that I started to think about a different job or something off in the future, I started to become ineffective in the job that I was in. And I see people now, and I'll talk to a lot of younger people that are in hockey or in different sports or in business, and I find that when I talk to them, they're distracted by what's in the future rather than what's the main thing
where they want to be, not
right
where
now.
They are right now.
Right, and I found that even in working with different people in different in the different organizations that I've been in, the people who are always worried about getting to the top of the mountain, no matter what that mountain may be for them, maybe in scouting, maybe in coaching, maybe in management or in PR or business operations or whatever it may be, those people, I find they always stumble the most, or they make mistakes, or they don't endear themselves to their direct report because people know when you're not locked into your job and they can sense it. And so when you're chasing and you're distracted and you're outside of what your responsibilities are, I've never seen anybody that's able to do that and still be elite at what they're doing in the here and now. And so I've learned from that and seen that, and I'm very cognizant of never really thinking about that. It doesn't, for whatever reason, it doesn't really excite me to think about what might be in the future. I'm worried about my responsibilities now with the Maple Leafs and trying and knowing that if I do my absolute best that I can here, whether it's with the Maple Leafs or somebody else, that greater responsibility will be there in the future. But if I don't do that now with the Maple Leafs, those opportunities aren't going to come. So I just try to stay really grounded here today and do the best I can here.
Welcome to what Max likes to call the dessert. But as you know, if you've been listening to this episode, Max is not here with us. He's off touring somewhere. So it's just Shane and I right now. Shane, what's up?
I went to Share Club.
Oh, okay. It's funny you bring that up because now all three members of the pod have been. I got to go first, luckily, with my friend AJ. And then last week, you heard Max talk about going to the Share Club with his friend Dan. And Shane, you went to the Share Club. Again, I should say the reason we all get to go to Share Club is because we have a friend, the Nut, that works at MLSE, and he's been kind enough to let us go into this very exclusive VIP club that has been created by Drake.
So I asked you about the Share Club.
Yeah.
And when you went, you were like, oh, it's kind of like it wasn't packed. And you're like, they come around with these sliders and, you get to eat free food.
Yeah, they have like free appetizers.
And you said, the drinks aren't cheap, but they're not super expensive.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't want to spend any money if I'm going to the Share Club, but I will, save money on dinner and eat the sliders and everything. Because I was like, hey, who needs to eat dinner when all these
free
sliders
appetizers are coming out? Okay.
And I'm not really going to be drinking because the wallet strings are tight right now, just to make up an expression. And then
that old gem.
I had an expression.
I hate when the wallet strings are tight. Yeah.
So Alex is like, okay, I know drinks are going to be expensive. So
your girlfriend?
Yeah, my girlfriend comes over with a thing of vodka to pre-drink before we go because we're not going to be buying any drinks.
Oh, smart. So you guys are pre-drinking the Share Club so you can save a bit of money.
Yeah. And I tell my girlfriend, I say, you wear your hottest club outfit because I want to look like I'm kind of a baller. So I'm going to wear a suit jacket and look like, like a kind of a douchey club owner type because I want to blend in and get the full club experience.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've never had the full club experience. You and our friends, we never get bottle service. We're always cheapskates. We never. So I wanted to actually live the experience. So girlfriend looks like crazy hot, blonde, arm candy. I'm wearing my suit jacket looking like perfect, like young douche, like stock market dude. I'm like, perfect. The stage is set to have a funny, fun, interesting night where nothing could go wrong. So I show up, and I get ushered in by this man. I go, I'm Shane Cunningham. He goes, oh, Shane, and this is I presume.
Oh, jeez.
Instantly, I'm like, okay, that's my ex-girlfriend's name, so I'm suspicious, and I'm thinking the Nut kind of set me up in a way, because he knows, like, Kita Bala, everything, like, I get weird around that situation, because, me and my ex-girlfriend, it didn't end on good terms, and any time I'm around her, I feel a lot of guilt, shame, and I get kind of despondent because, like, I was cheating or whatever, and I feel very guilty to be around her, and it makes me uncomfortable. Like a lot of people around their exes, it's an uncomfortable, even if you're good to them, just the sheer fact you're broken up, it's awkward.
It will change the dynamic of any room if you're around an ex.
But I proceed, and I walk in, and I get taken to a booth with a huge thing of Grey Goose. I'm like, I can't afford this. It's like, it's taken care of, sir. I'm like, uh-oh. I'm excited because it's cool. Like, I feel like Drake. Honestly. And, you text me and you're like, Drake's in the building, baby.
I was at home watching the basketball game and I saw he was courtside and I knew, Shane, that you were in the Share Club. And I was like, dude, just so you know, Drake's actually in the building. He'll probably come up to his club and you're going to get to see him.
I know. And we were in the
VIP of the VIP?
Yes.
Wow.
So we were in the VIP of the VIP club. All girls, by the way. And I'm not just saying like there was a ton of girls. literally, I'm not exaggerating, I was the only guy in the club, minus a DJ and some guy who kept going up to talk to the DJ, who seemed like he worked there.
Okay.
It must have been some special night where they just got all these hot babes, bottle service, like the nut maybe like hooked everyone up, all of his cool friends or whatever. Every young lady is looking at me in the club, and my girlfriend's like, every girl is looking at you. The second I go to the washroom, you're going to get swarmed. So I'm like, well, drink up, baby. Because I want her to go take a pee because I want to see if this is actually going to happen. Because this has never happened to me, by the way. Like,
So you're sitting there, you're in this VIP club, it's all women, you're the only man on a planet of women.
they're all looking at me, and they're not doing that thing where they kind of glance and look away, and then you're like, oh, maybe she likes me. They're doing that thing that never happens where they just, creepy guys will just stare.
And they'll maintain eye contact.
And really attractive girls will just stare, and it's like, this guy's a weirdo. But they're all doing that to me. Like, all of them. And it's very obvious. So I'm like, this is awesome. This is awesome. It's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. And, like, this is how my girlfriend gets treated every day, because she's, like, a blonde, like, typical-looking club girl, right? So she gets treated like that everywhere she goes. But for me, this is a very foreign experience. Anywho, she gets up to go to the washroom. So I'm like, this is going to be interesting. Like, what's going to happen? All the girls start waving at me, and they're like, want me to come over and chat to them.
What? The minute your girlfriend goes to the bathroom?
Because the way I'm dressed and the place I'm at, they don't think my girlfriend's my girlfriend. They think she's some disposable arm candy who just is lucky enough to be
Your date for the night.
my date for the night. And maybe they can get a taste of the sweet life that I can provide for them with my bank account that's probably very big, because that'd be the only reason I'd be at this club. Then, and it starts out me kind of making fun of this scenario. And then I get, like, the sliders, by the way, are not coming at all. Like, and I've had nothing to eat. Like, these, like, oh, yeah, it's like Slider City there, Shaney boy, don't worry. There's, like, 3 sliders, and they get taken up by all the girls. The girls are eating all the sliders. I never get any food. I'm feeling kind of crazy. I'm feeling kind of cocky. I keep, like, going to the washroom, and, like, girls, like, slapping my butt and stuff. And I'm like, you be nice. And like, I'm just being, like, I've become the douche. Like, it was insane. Like, I'm telling you, it was the nuttiest experience. And then I see
Your ex-girlfriend.
I see my ex-girlfriend, and I'm feeling like I've never felt before. Like, I'm like euphoric, but I'm like, and as a lot of people know who know me close, like maybe 5 people know, like I've been like planning on writing her a letter, and I've actually written one in my iPhone notes. So then I'm thinking, what better time than maybe just go
Say something.
Say something.
Oh my goodness.
Basically every, like, for the last couple years, I'll think of like, oh, that's good to throw in like a little apology letter,
Yeah.
biding my time, and I'll put it in my iPhone notes. Like, I do this with jokes and other things, also creative ideas. But I was trying to formulate something and send it to kind of like smooth things out. But then I kind of walk over and I chicken out, and I kind of like, I get despondent, and I'm drunk, and I'm just kind of like standing near her,
Oh geez.
and I'm not doing anything. And all of her friends, like, yeah, this is a nightmare, Mike. This is an absolute nightmare. And all of her friends are just like, is that your, like, weird ex-boyfriend who, like, is, like, probably the worst boyfriend you've ever had in your life? And she's like, yeah. And it's like,
You can hear this.
No, I can only imagine. And I guarantee I'm deadly accurate.
Sure.
But I can only imagine.
So in your defense, you're saying you weren't hovering to be a creep. You were trying to make amends, but then lost your nerve at the last second.
Yeah, but I was still, like, it is creepy. I'm not saying it's not creepy. It's a weird thing to do, and you'd have to know me really well to understand it. Anyway, I wake up, boom, I'm in my bed. No one's in my bed with me.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, hello? That's my drunk screaming. And then my girlfriend's in the other room, and then she was like, oh, last night was just bad. But then, luckily, it got over with very quick. And then we found out that Drake was actually in our booth after, because I had to leave. By the way, This all transpired between 7 and 9. I was in bed by 9:30. Like, this isn't like...
Before the basketball game was over, you were sleeping.
Yes. I had no clue the score, nothing. There's photos of Drake in our booth talking to the girls that were looking at me. Photos with him. If I had stayed an hour longer, I would have had photos with Drake and had this awesome experience. But yeah, I'm a effing idiot on this night. But luckily, any other girlfriend might have just dumped me or hated me for a week or something. But
your current girlfriend was understanding?
Fine about it. Like, she was understanding. But she had known that I was, like, writing a thing anyway, so I think that helped.
Right. But was she bitter that she missed Drake? That's a hard one to get over.
I think she was just bitter that she had me as a boyfriend.
That's it. That's all. That's our episode. Thank you for listening to the Mike on Much podcast. All of our artwork is done by Jenna Gregory at jennasdoodles.com. You can follow us at Mike on Much on Instagram and Twitter. The Mike on Much podcast is produced by Max Kerman, and I am your host, Mike Veerman. See you next week if we don't die on the weekend.